is the last Sunday of 2025. We are done with this year. It marks 1 year since I delivered the first Godless sermon of the Church of Korihors, and the first sermon that I have preached since I left Mormonism some 24 years ago. Exciting things on the horizon, but most of all, I just want to tell you guys how appreciative I am for the past year. It's been 38 Godless sermons now, and some of which either have been lost or miscounted because there are a few missing as I've gone through. I do remember deleting a couple, so it could be that this is 38. It may also just be that over the course of this past year, we've done so much that I've actually lost track of some of it. We have published only one overview. That is going to have to be something that I remedy soon. But we launched a website and we launched a YouTube channel that has grown in hundreds of subscribers, which would be lovely if it was more. But the thing that's wonderful about it is we've been able to keep this community tight, keep it small, and well, not necessarily trying to keep it small, but keep it to where the people who are interested in what we're doing are the ones who engage with us and engage with what we do. And so this is great. Hey, Jules, how's it going? It's been a year, man. And I wanted to tell you about some of the exciting things that are taking shape since I started talking on TikTok and also some here on YouTube about the possibility of in-person gatherings in 2026. It's something I tried to make happen in 2025. I sucked at that. But now, strangely enough, with my divorce and with the the changing of my housing situation, I've actually kind of become liberated to be able to get out of the studio, get out into the world, and start spreading this message. And for the first time, ironically, it's after a year of doing this and finding all the ways to fail. It's been after a full year of this that now people are starting to take interest and notice that the Church of Korihor exists, and that we are a real thing. Of course, everybody's natural inclination, especially if you have been Mormon, people's natural inclination is to assume that we are a joke. And as I said before, I'm fine with that. They can think what they want, because the more people think that we are a joke is the less people are looking into what we're doing. And we are, if anything, trying to keep the assholes out. I'm the only asshole allowed in here. So I thought it would be fun to revisit 1 year later the first Godless sermon and then tell you what I'm thinking we're going to do for 2026 to reposition things and create something that is really exciting. Hi, Peyton Phillips. Welcome. Yeah, so we're going to get started on that. But first, before we do any talking about the future, let us take a quick flashback to the past, to how this all began. We're going home. We're going home. I want to tell you the story of the Korihor sigil, or the Koaz. That's the symbol of the Church of Korihor. Now, we're a church for godless people, so it's probably no surprise that this story, it's kind of geeky. In April 1970, Apollo 13 was on the third mission to land on the moon. But 2 days into the journey, an oxygen tank in their service module exploded, crippling the spacecraft and leaving astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes in a desperate fight to get home alive.
They had to shut down most of the electronics on their spacecraft, including the guidance computer that charted their way home. But on their way back toward Earth, they discovered that they were coming in too shallow and too fast. Unless they corrected course and slowed down, they would bounce off the Earth's atmosphere into space, where they surely would die. They figured that they could manually fire the lunar module's engine, but they would only have 14 seconds of fuel. Now, if you're going to be stuck in outer space without a guidance computer, the guy you want with you is Jim Lovell. When Lovell was the command module pilot on Apollo 8, Mission Control had him rehearse this exact scenario. Astronaut means sailor of the stars, but really every sailor is an astronaut, because one of humanity's greatest instruments has been the sextant, an instrument to judge your place by measuring your placement to the stars. Well, the Apollo 13 service module had a modern version of a sextant built into it. And Jim Lovell was the first man in space to navigate to the moon and back, at least partly, with only the stars to go by. But Apollo 13 had a problem that Apollo 8 did not. Debris from the explosion obscured Lovell's view so that he couldn't see the stars through the sextant. This is where it would be easy to give up. The crew of Aquarius could blame Houston, Houston could blame them. They could despair and shut down. But none of those options were a way home. That's when Jim Lovell came up with a pretty innovative idea, the Crewman Optical Alignment Sight, or COAS. Now, the COAS is basically like the crosshairs of a rifle scope, designed to align the two parts of the spacecraft while they were docking. Now, Lovell fixed that bullseye instead on the only fixed point in space that he could see through the lunar module window, Earth. They chose the Earth's terminator line, the line between the day and night sides of the Earth, as the reference point, keeping the Earth's terminator line lined up in the COAS, with Jim controlling the yaw and the burn and Fred manning the pitch and Jack timing the burn on his watch. They fired the engines and corrected that angle in 14 seconds.
Guide me by morning light, keeping home in my sight. With doubts and dreams take flight. We flash in the dark, so let's flash, flash bright. On a mission to save ourselves, break with dogma, with these shells. My friend, if you choose to be free, I'll light your path if you'll walk with me. We're going home to where we'll find a world where life is worth the climb. One day we will crash and we will die. Oh, my friends, that's not tonight.
You know, I remember when Apollo 13, the movie, came out, Tom Hanks says to Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon, 0 Degrees, "Gentlemen, what are your intentions?" "I'd like to go home. You and I are living in an emergency. We can't see the stars, and our guidance computer isn't working. We have to line up the real world in the COAS. We have to use courage. We have to use tenacity and innovation. We're going to have to science the shit out of this if we're going to make a world that we want to live in. And to do that, you need godless people. This is our time. This is the time when we need atheists and agnostics to get religion, but instead of a religion about God, we need a religion about us. We are our saviors. This is our time."
No more shadows in our mind. Leave the fears and past.
fail, I'll start again. I'm looking for people who have the courage to fail with me. Till we find all the ways to fail, or by some stroke of luck, we go home. Amen.
By math and science, our path is clear. Strangers once our re-entry nears. Sighting land, we'll quit this sea. I'm going home, who will come with me?
Still gets me every time. I love that old sermon. We're going to do a lot. I'm going to do a lot less of playing that in the next year. Not that we did it much this year. But I have plans for some changes to that now that I have gotten better at making video footage of our own that we can use for things. I wanted to tell you guys about a couple of things that are recent developments. But first, I want to touch on something there with the ending of that promotional video, that 8-minute short version of "We're Going Home." I've been very proud to show that to people. Not everybody likes it. Some people like it. And I'm grateful for anybody who likes any of my videos. As you guys know, video production is was my first career, and it's still mainly what I do in my day job. When I get a chance, I do a lot of digital marketing. That's what now it was video production. Turns out that's not a career that had much staying power. So digital marketing is my new thing. I don't know, Lisa. Lisa, I'm so glad that you're here, though. I hope that the new job is working out. Your new schedule. I thought we weren't going to see you on Sunday mornings, but I'm glad you're here. I love seeing your name in there, in the comments there. So my ambitions for the Church of Korihors at the start were pretty big, but I did say in that first Godless sermon, and fulfilled in prophetic value, that I would fail. It was brought up to me by my dear friend Jenny, and yes, Jenny and I are still close friends. At least I think so. And who told me, I don't know that you should really lead with talking about failure. Fair. It's true, but it's not great marketing. At the time, I wasn't really interested in the marketing aspect. Well, I was and I wasn't. I was mostly just trying to focus on updating my own story about how I was developing and growing as a person, because I became very passionate right about the time that we started the Church of Korihors about Alain de Botton, the modern philosopher of pessimism, and pessimism, philosophical pessimism. Again, another thing that you don't put on the cover of something if you want people to open it. Oh yeah, let's talk about pessimism. No. But pessimism isn't about cynicism. It isn't about just seeing everything as glass half empty. It was about this idea that we need to be able to acknowledge, for our sake of our anxiety, that which everybody experiences. At least I don't know of anybody who doesn't experience some kind of anxiety. Now, of course, there's an official diagnosis for that, so I don't want to make any medical claims here. But I have long been convinced that even general anxiety is really just another form of anxiety. But that's my conviction. One of the things that Alain de Botton at the School of Life teaches and has a course in is how to fail. And I took it. it was an online course, and it really changed my outlook on life. Prior to that, my failure of my first career had really haunted me because, of course, my first career was as a video producer, but as I tend to do, I dreamt big. And so my dream, of course, from the time I was a small boy, well, from a young man, anyways, was to become a filmmaker. And my whole career in video production was kind of a long experience of discovering that no matter how good I was at something or thought I was, and no matter how big my dreams or how good my ideas, and no matter how good my connections, some things just don't work out. And and it's largely because of circumstances beyond your control. And as I have said before, I had to stop. I had to give up on my dream to become a filmmaker because I started to lose my passion for the art of it because I loved doing it. Doing anything involved with video. And I realized if I didn't quit trying to make this into my career, I was going to become so frustrated with the limited vision of human beings around me to get it to take off the ground, and especially of convincing people who have significant amounts of money can invest in something like a film that it was even worth it, and that if I spent my time, if I spent, if I continued to spend this much time doing this, I was going to fall out of love with the art, with the craft. And I realized that was a sacrifice I wasn't willing to make. For the first time, there was a sacrifice I wasn't willing to make. I wasn't willing to go on trying to make movies if it was going to make me hate it. And so I realized it was probably the one of all the things I've done in my life, probably the scariest thing was to give up on film. And and I'm lucky to have had two partners at the time, three partners at the time, who were all very good to me and very encouraging, and including my now ex-wife. And they were all great. And witnessing me go through this midlife crisis, turning 40 and arriving in my 40s and realizing I was never going to make movies, at least not in the traditional sense. And that I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And not really wanting much of a life after that. And trying to rediscover what was important in life. Why it is, it's one thing to say, well, you have kids or you have a spouse or you have people, friends, you have people around you who love you, and that's worth living for. Uh, but the strange thing about life worth living is that oftentimes it's less about how the math adds up on paper and more about how it adds up in here. We got Diamond Dave with us. Dave, how you doing, man? It's good to see you. What time is it in Mongolia? That's great, man. Welcome. And so I took this course on how to fail. It sounds silly, but it was really good. And in there, I met some fantastic people, and we did these little breakout sessions. It's actually a really amazing thing what they did with School of Life because it was during the pandemic. I'm just going to say trigger words here, and then, if we get blacklisted, we get blacklisted, whatever. And I met some remarkable people. I've told the story before about I met this woman who was living in London at the time. And we had to tell each other, like, this is the thing that I failed at, that really broke my heart, and get kind of an objective perspective from another person, from a person you just barely met. And this woman was This woman was working on her third degree, her third graduate school degree at Oxford University. And I was like, she was from America. She's American, but she's, or maybe Canadian. I don't remember. She sounded very American. And she's, I'm like looking at her. I'm like, are you kidding me? I dropped out of film school 20 years ago, and you're working on your third degree. And if my recollection is correct, I said, how are you managing that? She was, you know, quite a few years younger than me. I'm pretty sure she was like 29 or something like that, in her late 20s, early 30s. I said, how have you managed to go to school so much and all over the world and do, these amazing and this education and everything? I'm like, what do you have to feel sorry about having failed at? And she, if I remember correctly, she'd lost one of her parents, and she was born to money, and she was nervous about getting into a career. But more than that, she was worried that she was never going to find love and never find a family, never start a family. And that was like all that she wanted in life. And she felt like a failure because of that. And I was moved by that. I was really moved by that, because while I was sitting here bitching about, oh, I didn't become the next Spielberg like I thought I was going to be, she's, she's sitting here telling me, you have a wife, you have 3 children, you have a family, you have friends who love you and care about you, and wherever you are, there's a family somewhere missing you. And you feel like a failure just because you didn't become the next Spielberg, just because you didn't become the next George Lucas, because you didn't fulfill this boyhood dream. And I tell you, I've never felt quite so mired in my own privilege. I'm like, wow, you say it, but I'm like, man, when you say it, that sounds pretty bad. Um, and she's like, it's the only thing I want in life, and you have it in spades. And then you had telling me that, since becoming an ethical non-monogamist, now you have 2 additional partners as well, and you're worried that you failed in life. And I said, yeah, because my work is not anything that is not what gives me passion, and it doesn't make me feel fulfilled. And she's like, well, okay, but seems like some perspective is necessary for you to look at and realize that life is not just about how you make money or what you do with your time. Life is about the love of the people that you surround yourself with, and uh, and it seems to me like you're a man who's pretty rich in that. That was pretty moving. That was an important thing for me at the time. And like I said, making a life worth living is very rarely about the math that as it works out on paper. It's about how you feel. It's about the passion that you feel. I came to realize that while my boyhood dream was a great source of energy for me and drive and passion in life for the first half of my life, um, it also was what was holding me back. It had become, failing at filmmaking, strangely enough, had become the safe place for me. It was where I had learned that being alive was disappointing myself and disappointing everybody around me, or at least feeling that way inside my head, and not realizing that for most of the people who loved me, They wouldn't really care if I sold hot dogs down on, in a hot dog stand down on the corner. They, I would, I was not my work. And it was around that time that I began to realize that the lack of purpose in my life had led me to be ignorant of my own feelings, to be ignorant of what made me feel like there was a direction in my life, and that while atheism can't really be blamed for that, because atheism isn't a religion, atheism isn't a condition, atheism is just a lack of a condition, it's a lack of a thing. Nonetheless, as an atheist, again, I had found in the lack of something a safe haven where I could chicken out of my own life. And I said, okay, what am I missing? Who am I letting down if I went back to the purpose driven life that I had when I was a Mormon, when I was a missionary? And I thought, well, I let down all the people who know me as an atheist. But that didn't make sense. My friends who know me as an atheist, I never made them a promise I would be an atheist. They don't care. My family doesn't care. If anything, if I was to go back to being a Mormon, it would make my parents ecstatic. I wouldn't be letting anybody down by going back to church, except for me. I would be constantly disappointed in myself. So there's no path forward by going backward for me. But I remembered that when I was a missionary, for all of my misgivings about missionary work, the one thing that was clear to me when I was a missionary was that I had a singular purpose, that there was never a moment where I doubted that there was a reason why I was in Peru. Now, of course, I come to understand while working as a missionary for the Mormon Church that the reason I was in Peru was to convince poor people, primarily, to give 10% of what income they have. I'm not Iranian. That's an interesting question, Persian YouTuber. No, I am Latinx. Welcome in here. That was interesting. Welcome. But that being a missionary in Peru, my purpose, whether I liked it or not, was to make a rich corporation even richer by convincing poor Catholics to give 10% of their income for the rest of their life, or commit to an organization that really was pretty heartless about how it treated them. That's a difficult thing for me to say right now, because I still have converts who I converted to Mormonism back in 2000, 2001, who are there, members of the church. And I have friends I made there in the church who are still friends of mine and are leaders there in Lima. I told some of you I met with a good friend of mine. I don't want to call him out by name. I've met some 3 times now with a guy I served with in Peru, who's now a stake president in Lima. And one of those times was during the pandemic. And he said, and he had flown here to the United States after years of trying with his wife to have a child. They finally had managed to have a child. And it was an exciting time for him. And then the pandemic. And he said to me, he said, Joe, and so he came here to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. What is it? It was like the one and done one, right? Because his visa would only allow him to visit for a while. For a short while, he couldn't come here and get like the multi-stage vaccine. And he flew from Peru to here, to Texas, actually, just to get vaccinated. And when he got there, he said, I went to a Walmart. He's like, I just went to the nearest place where he could get a vaccine was a Walmart. So he goes to Walmart, and he's like, I'm waiting to go in and get this vaccine. And he said, because I didn't want my newborn child or my wife, who was still, vulnerable, because he had just barely had a baby. So like 6 months before or something like that. And he said, I didn't want my child or my wife to get it from me. If I could at least do this much and vaccinate myself, maybe I could prevent my wife from my family from getting this terrible illness. And he said, and I was standing and was waiting in line to get vaccinated. And they came over the radio, over the intercom. A voice came over the intercom saying, please, please get vaccinated. Come in and get the vaccine. And he said, and I looked around and realized all these Americans, and they had to, were there in a country where this vaccine is available, that could save their life, that could protect other people, and they have to beg these people to get it. And he's like, I flew here from Lima to get this, and was lucky they gave me that, with all the lockdowns and everything. He's like, I was lucky they let me into this country to come and get this vaccine. And then the people who actually live here won't get it. And he's like, I find it remarkable. He's like, I love the church. He's a member of an American church. He's like, I love you guys, but you got to understand how privileged you are. And I said, you're preaching to the choir. Here he'd come to Utah. Sorry, just making sure this isn't an emergency. Anyway, cool. But I asked him, like, tell me about it in Peru. Tell me about what's going on. And he said, it's so bad. It's so bad. And he said, since I became a stake president, my ecclesiastical work is mainly just burying the members of my stake. They were losing so many people to COVID. Broke my heart. I had an interesting conversation actually just today on here on YouTube with a woman that I started interacting with her and her content as she has started taking missionary discussions with the LDS, but also begun the process of possibly, it seems, converting maybe to Catholicism. And I found it interesting, and I told her, she had just said, as we were going live, she had just left a comment on one of her videos saying, I appreciate your comments, but what exactly is it that you're doing here? Because it seems like you still have a feeling of communion with the Latter-day Saints. And I said, oh, whether I like it or not, we are one community. Their community affects my community. And that's true. I mean, 25 years later, I shouldn't be sitting here. I should be pissed at the Mormon church and not caring whether or not there are Mormons who are passing from COVID, right? I mean, that's what it seemed, but it's not true. It breaks my heart. I fell in love with the Peruvian people while I was serving there. And when I was a missionary, I had a sense of purpose. The problems with Mormonism are abundant and many, and I'm preaching to the choir here, quite literally. If I tell anybody here any of the many reasons why I don't believe in Mormonism, I don't think anybody else should believe in Mormonism. But I do believe that it was part of my journey, my spiritual development, my spiritual journey. And whether or not it's where I belonged, it's what I needed to do with it's what I needed to do at the time to discover that I could become a better person, and that I could put service towards other people ahead of my own ambitions to become something. And I missed it. I didn't miss the church. I still don't miss the church, the Mormon church. I don't miss the priesthood. I don't miss the brethren. I don't miss the lies. Oh, those are all things I don't miss. I don't miss the patriarchy at all. I got to be blunt with you. I don't miss it at all. I'm a little startled still, especially lately. You know, I released a somewhat controversial, I think, episode of Hellfire Agency just the day before yesterday. My interview with Renee Steelman of She Became Visible, in which she called out that, you know, it's a pretty toxic space, the ex-Mormon content creation space. And she pretty directly called out even John Dehlin at Mormon Stories, which is something a lot of women have been wishing somebody would do for a while, and have been saying that they wish somebody would call out how toxic and how patriarchal the ex-Mormon podcasting content space is. And I remember back to a Mormon Discussions episode where Bill Real and RFM, no, you know, no shame upon them from my side. I let these women speak and say their truth, speak their truth. My interactions with them, I haven't really had much, not like Renee had anyway. And so, you know, I let her voice stand and speak for itself. It needs no support from me to be true, or to be hers. I was startled by what she had told me off camera about her interactions with Mormon Discussions, and even Mormon Stories, and the Open Stories Foundation, two organizations that I had no qualms about supporting. Before, in the last year, I saw the way that they hurt people that I really care about. And the patriarchal side, and it was true, but it's true what women are saying about what's so toxic about this ex-Mormon content space, which is that the men do appear to miss the patriarchy. And which is startling to me, because I so do not. All of my Mormon experience, I wish that the church would come out with some revelation that they were going to start ordaining women to the priesthood. I remember thinking so many times, I so wish I could go to a woman for a blessing. I so wish that I could get that these women, that the sister missionaries I was serving with, could baptize their own converts. I remember thinking, you know, it felt good. It was an honorable thing. It felt to me at the time that, you know, I had these sister missionaries that I would serve with, but if they converted somebody to the church, they had to ask one of us to baptize them. And at first it was like, you know, it did feel nice. It did feel good to think, oh, well, God has this purpose for me. God intended for me to be a priesthood holder, and that's why he gave me a penis. You know, because, you know, you get a penis, you get the priesthood. That's how that works. Obviously, you didn't say it that way, but everybody knew it. And I remember but I remember, as I was actually down in Peru doing this and watching as these sister missionaries would put effort Oh, good. We're getting the stragglers. I'm glad. Welcome, stragglers. And it's like I came to realize as I was working among these people that I was bringing, especially bringing women into a system that was abusive to women, and I couldn't say that it was a labor of love to bring people into a system where they were going to be marginalized. And so, if you asked me today if I miss the patriarchy, the answer is flatly no. I wish I could deconstruct the patriarchy even further, but there's only so much I can do. Given that, as I've stated, I am a man. In any event, 1 year ago, I started the Church of Korihor, and part of that was about my spiritual growth and about my wanting to share with other atheists, agnostics, and people who are non-religious an opportunity to have a community. But it was also mainly about helping people leave the Mormon church because, as many of you know, if you've been around, I was kicked out of the Mormon church in 2013. And then I published my first book, The Korihor Argument, about my process of leaving the church. That was born out of a decade of church hurt, quote unquote, and how pissed I was in my angry phase about the Mormon church being untrue, being lies, and frankly, about how there was generational trauma for me because as I saw that I wasn't fooled or tricked into becoming a Mormon. My ancestors were, and convinced to give up everything, all their worldly possessions, back in the Midwest, and make the dangerous trek to Utah, start over in frankly, a human trafficking cult, which is what Mormonism is. That's the roots of Mormonism. And in fact, before I go on here and talk about this, because I should really switch gears here, I was talking with my family. I've had some time to connect with my parents since I've moved part time into their house here in St. George since my divorce, and talked to my dad particularly about Joseph Lafayette Rollins. My great uncle Joseph Lafayette Rollins is remembered as the father of the University of Utah, but more importantly, as the father of Utah statehood, because my great uncle Joseph Lafayette Rollins, I am Joseph Lindsay Rollins. Terrible case of a boy named Sue. Don't get started with me. He was the first congressman from Utah, and then he became the first senator. Okay. Thanks. He became the first senator from the state of Utah. He was the guy who drafted the articles, or the enabling act that allowed Utah to become a state, and that required his going to Washington and negotiating with the politicians there, saying, "Look, yes, we have a lot of polygamists in Utah, and as you might guess, they're still practicing polygamy. You don't like it. I don't like it. Between you and me, I don't like it, but the church is powerful out there. And so we're going to have to negotiate this." And he basically helped to negotiate the end of polygamy, Mormon polygamy, at least institutionalized, publicly institutionalized by the church. And it was it was a pretty controversial thing. I was talking to my dad, and he was talking about how he's like, all my life we didn't talk about Joseph Lafayette. We didn't talk about him. He said, I knew that there was an ex-Mormon in our family, but we didn't talk about him. That's how Mormons treat ex-Mormons originally. These days, there are so many of us that families can't work around it, right? So I want to show you guys something while this has been going on. I started to make some videos this week while I was talking to Renee Steelman, and I was making a lot of preparations to publish this video that pretty directly calls out men in the ex-Mormon space, which is something I don't normally do. I normally think of the ex-Mormon space as somewhat sacred, if you will, where we kind of have to look out for each other. But the fact of the matter is that I do remember, for example, back at Mormon Discussions, they had this episode around the time that John Dehlin first started to say at Mormon Stories that, that he missed church, that he missed going to church, that he missed the priesthood. I don't remember the exact things, and I don't want to say too much. And I don't, if he misses church and misses the church and wants to go back, well, blessings to him. May his spiritual journey be just wondrous to him. I'm not going to speak for him. And for all the things fairly disappointing things I have learned recently about some of my fellow content creators in this space, I do want them to be happy, and I don't expect them to have to do anything that conforms to the spiritual journey that I am on. And let them go back to what they want to do. If they want to go back to the church, go back to the church, I guess. But I remember around that time that Bill Reel and RFM started to talk about how maybe we in this ex-Mormon community need church, if not the Mormon church, maybe a church. And I remember getting into the comments with that at the time, with the Church of Korihors brand new in the world, and going, you could join our church. You could be a part of our church if you guys wanted. You would find community. You would have people to commune with. But then while I was listening to them talk, I heard a lot of talk in that process about how they didn't want to platform God, but at the same time, God was like a central part of what they missed about the church. And so they didn't know how to start a church that was about church and not about God at all, but also not about atheism or agnosticism, because that just didn't make sense to them. And I remember going, have I not been here publishing and preaching sermons and building a whole community just of godless spiritual people? I mean, have I not been here do I exist in your people's minds? I came to realize I don't think that I think it was really just clickbait. They were really just making content to try and get people stirred up to asking questions about, really, are these ex-Mormon men going to go back to the Mormon church? And I really don't think I didn't think there was anything more to that. Now I'm starting to think maybe actually that was wrong, and they actually do just miss the Mormon church and wish they could go back. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. I'm only picking up things I'm hearing from other people, and granted, mainly from people who are pretty pissed off with the men in this space. Anyway, while I've been doing that, at the same time, my TikTok has been blowing up. I published that video about our mission to serve the unsheltered, and it's getting thousands and thousands of views. It's taking off on TikTok. It's even getting some views here on YouTube, but mainly because I've been paying Google to, I've been donating my tithes this month are going to paying Google to promote our mission to serve the unsheltered. And it's been pretty amazing, actually. I've been planning to do this for a while. I just hadn't had the money to do it. And now that I'm, the divorce, etc., I was able to free up a couple $100. Nothing really significant. I think I've spent so far I've spent $350, and not that big of a deal, right? Just to promote the Church of Korihors' mission to serve the unsheltered. And the response I have had is overwhelming. People find out that the Church of Korihors is serving the people living on the streets, and they get they're blown away that there's a godless church out here that cares about this. And for the first time, people hear about the Church of Korihor, ask who is Korihor, and find out that Korihor was a homeless man who was abandoned by his community. He's a fictional character. I still cry about him every time, but then I cried every time Yoda died in Return of the Jedi. Spoiler alert. That he was a homeless man who was turned out onto the streets by the heartless greed of his Christian neighbors. And the strange irony is, since I started taking blankets out to people who are cold in Salt Lake City, come to find out that the story of this man from the Book of Mormon is the story of people every day here in Utah. And not just here in Utah, as you guys saw, there was this woman who recently started calling around to churches and asking them if they could help her out with a little formula for her baby, which doesn't exist, and found that these churches wouldn't help her. Yes, including the Mormon church. And it's in the midst of that I released that video. I think you guys know the one. I'm tempted to play it here, but we've already played one video. And that's somewhat, you guys know the one, most of you out there. But I want to show you some of the interactions that I've had with people. Let me actually pull up the comments. I'm gonna pull up that TikTok video because I pushed it to TikTok and onto YouTube. I have it pulled up here. Sorry, I'll find it. Well, here, I'll just share my screen while I'm looking for it. Sometimes I have like app blindness, I call it. Share screen. TikTok. Hopefully this works. All right. So this is my, I'm Hellfire Agency on TikTok here. A lot of this is angry. I won't play all this kind of stuff for you, but a lot of it is also funny. Let's just start scrolling through some stuff, actually, because I think you guys, if you don't know. So one of the new Mormon prophets, let's not talk about that. C. Blade Combs is a company. That's fun. That's kind of a impromptu overview that I did.
Or by a church. This one in Salt Lake City, Utah, is available to sell. One of many in Utah.
This is me talking about churches.
I don't care if they want to arrest me, but if you voted for Trump 3 times.
One of the interesting things that gets some traction on YouTube and Facebook and on TikTok has been this trend of using AI generated pretty girls to promote MAGA on one side and to promote Christian groups on the other. It's ironic. It's ironic. It's fascinating to me to see how right-wing conservatism and religious conservatism, they all want to use women, especially young, pretty, skinny white girls, to promote MAGA or to promote Christianity, Christian nationalism, which effectively is the same thing at this point. And but women don't want anything to do with them. And it's like, that's gratifying to see. Women don't like them and don't want anything to do with them. And so they've taken to generating AI generated what I call a Mormon what have been referred to Mormon thirst trap girls. So there's another one of these. There are a couple of these that are interesting. Well, this one was actually here. I'll show you.
You just got a new follower. I'm following back everyone who comments. God bless y'all. I don't care if this offends you. Good. Keep scrolling. But if you love Trump, you just earned yourself a follower. This offends you. Good. Keep scrolling. But if you love Trump, you just earned yourself a follower. This offends you. Good. Keep scrolling. This offends you. Good.
That was one channel, guys. I mean, are you disgusted yet? That's one channel that all they do is publish AI generated girls, white girls looking at the camera, telling you that they're going to become your new best friend. They're going to become your new little AI girlfriend for supporting Donald Trump. And it's like, and stoking all the fears that people, that movement is using to try and drive people into this really what is now its own cult. And I'm just going to call it out because I call out cults. MAGA is a cult, and I'm not telling anybody how to vote. And like I've said before, I would ordain Trump supporters in the Church of Korihor. I don't have a litmus test on that, but I can tell you this right here and now. I am more concerned this year about people being indoctrinated into the Make America Great Again cult than I am even about people being indoctrinated into Scientology or the Jehovah's Witnesses. And those are bad. Those are high on my list. But in any event, the fact that they have to AI generate their thirst trap girls is hilarious to me. The interactions that people are having with these AI generated Mormon thirst trap girls, because and I'll show you here in a minute why I say that they're Mormon thirst trap girls, the AI generated Mormon thirst trap girls. The reason, the terrifying thing about it is to go into the comment section of those videos and see how many men, especially older men. I made a video about this and I ended up not publishing it because it was so creepy. It was men older than me, many times, who had profile pictures from their Facebook accounts where they would have like their little girl. In one case, I saw a guy who had his little girl, maybe probably 5 years old, as his profile picture for his Facebook account, and left a comment on one of these videos, these AI videos. It was words to the effect of, I just love to see a wholesome, I won't even repeat it, you guys. Just reading this guy's comment made me want to vomit, frankly. It was so hypersexualized and perverse and just disgusting. And I was reading it and realizing this man's profile is all about how he's this family man. He even has his little girl as his profile picture. And I was just blown away. I'm like, it's just on the face plain. These people are showing to the whole world their value system, and it's disturbing. It's disturbing. So anyways, so this is just another one of the many videos. I publish our hymns on here.
So I've been seeing a lot of
I've been
posts lately
publishing
about people.
some videos about the labor market and how things are going bad for us in labor wise.
Go ahead and file under what?
So you know how good stuff. Let's get to the video that matters here. American Union is starting to take off all of a sudden. I thought nobody liked it, but now all of a sudden it's starting to take off.
At church,
Okay.
you'll feel his wrath.
Remember I said about Mormon thirst trap girls? So this page, I found out recently, my friend Jesse Stay apparently made this page for a Mormon content creator, for a Mormon company that sold it to another company that I'm pretty sure, I think there's some way, it seems to be they are in some way now, the company that owns it now, BeliefNet, is basically affiliated with the Heritage Foundation. But I don't know that for sure yet. But I mean, it's giving the vibe as I looked into it and then realized I don't care. But so you have this channel that was created for Mormons, and but they don't have, they're not affiliated with the Mormon church directly. And at first I thought, holy crap, are the Mormons generating? Because Mormons do videos that look just like this, but they get these sister missionaries, usually white girls from Utah who apparently, appear to be from Utah, being from the Mormon culture, Mormon community. They look familiar, but I'm like watching this video, and I've made enough AI generated video now, which, I know how people feel about it, but I love it. I think AI generated video I think it's great. And as a filmmaker, I think it's great. Anyways, but I'm watching these women talking and realizing there's something off. I'm like, and I look at them like, okay, so the triple combination, the Book of Mormon Bible that she's holding in her hand, obviously has garbled text. Okay, so that's AI generated. If you look at their teeth, that's one thing with AI generated video, where people are talking and where the AI generated voice or other voice or the voiceover has been matched with their lips. What they do generally, one of the ways that you can tell that it's not quite right is that basically the AI will make their mouth move, but then put a mask. It basically puts a mask in the opening of their lips, and then puts teeth behind there and moves the teeth in time. And so if you look at some AI generated video and you look at their mouth, you'll see that their teeth look fake. It's like they have veneers, but their veneers are from a different dimension. And that's how I was like, holy shit, the Mormons are making AI generated missionaries? What are you talking about? Are you serious? They have all these missionaries. Just film the ones you have. Why are you making them AI? And then I realized, oh, they're looking into the organization. Oh, this isn't even the Mormons. This is just an organization, a Christian ministry that owns that owns BeliefNet, that just wants to look Mormon. Ugh. Anyways, but so I had to make a funny video. This is the video, by the way. This is the video that I found that was paid promotion to me on YouTube, on Facebook. That I found that guy with or it was like at least 24 comments on this video were men trying to get the girls, the white girls, the AI generated white girls in the ad to respond to them to get them to come to church, and by sexualizing them. And I was just like, what have we become? I mean, here's the thing. You can say all that you like. You can try to convince me all that you like, that as an atheist, I should have nothing to say about spirituality. But this right here is a spiritual crisis. We, as a people in America, are in spiritual crisis with the kind of comments people make. You'll see that on this video on TikTok, one of the first comments is from my friend Jesse Stay. And he says, fun fact, I created that page. They bought it from Deseret Digital Media after I worked there. And we had a fun interaction with it. But anyways, people have been, mostly these are people who are ex-Mormon. Anyways, who have been interacting.
Meanwhile, German atheists were already
doing really well. I've been posting more clips. People have been saying they wanted to see more shorts, shareable shorts from the Godless sermons. So I've started publishing.
And you can watch the live stream.
And then toxic thing I do is I go and I find these Mormon videos where they're trying to convince each other to go to church. This guy actually interacted, laid comment on this on YouTube after I stitched it, and he's like, and he was actually pretty chill about it. I hope to actually meet the guy because he actually does seem pretty chill.
There is one more. We're gonna give it this one.
I
more.
don't know if you guys saw this. I think I showed it last Sunday. Whatever. Jacob Hansen, featured one of my comments on one of his Ask Me Anything lives.
Super chat, just because it's a friend of mine, one of my favorite atheists. Go ahead. I was on the show actually.
Hellfire Agency. I agree with Hayden that atheists get it right. Reasons, greetings from your favorite Korihor.
That was a fun one to make, and a lot of people are really liking it.
I have often wondered about my own
mortality. Another snippet from a Godless sermon. Ted Bundy used to kill people, so don't blame me about the one. This video is really taking off. It's just a video about how I'm following up on how the Mormon Church is changing its definition of damnation, and how I've said for a while that when Mormons don't believe in damnation, have changed their definition of damnation, everything will have changed. So I'll be looking for.
I'd argue the person who invented
a lot of stuff in here is borderline political. I'm just going to be blunt with you about it, but it is my personal TikTok channel, so I should be allowed to do a little bit because this is an important time. Okay, so this was a response to the video, to the YouTube video. Oh, or to the video about our mission to the unsheltered. This really cool person. She's super chill. She and I interacted after this, and she's like, I do love it. She like left a bunch of heart a comment with a bunch of heart emojis and stuff, and I'm like, okay, cool, we are cool. But she had commented on it saying, "Is this satire?"
Is it what? Just kidding. The Church of Korihors is not satire. The Church of Korihors is very much real, a church registered with the state of Utah and the Internal Revenue Service. When you go to the website, you can click on Give to give to our giving missions. You can also donate to the church in general. You can also just join our church as a friend of Korihor for free, or for $4 a month. You can become a contributor, or you can even join as a fellow of the church and actually join the church.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead now. Remember, I realized why I wasn't seeing this. That video is now my pinned video. So this is the video that is, taking off. This is organic, 2,000 views on TikTok, which isn't a ton, but compared to how most of my videos just posted and not promoted, we're talking 140, 80, 70, 130 views. I'm most of the time in 300 view hell. You get 300 views and then things, and then occasionally I'll pay to promote something, like $20. Like this one for Bestowal, I paid $20 to promote it for like a day, and I probably won't do that again. Anyway, but I love that hymn, and I wanted more people to see it, and realized nobody was going to at that point. So, anyways, I think I paid for 1 day of promotion with this video, but I don't think I'm not sure. It was like some kind of discounted rate where I could like pay like $8 to promote this, but otherwise, this video is now.
We've all heard the stories
on its own
of wealthy churches that are turning their backs on the needy this winter. You deserve to know that there's a poor church that's doing differently. That's partly because we are a godless church. We're the Church of Korihor. Korihor is a legendary atheist from the Book of Mormon who taught critical thinking and stood up to expose the greed of the church. And for that, his Christian neighbors turned him out onto the streets and left him for dead. 1 year ago, I started the Church of Korihor with some friends, and our first mission was to go out to Salt Lake City and deliver blankets to the people living on the streets. And every year we lose some of our neighbors, frozen on those cold streets. We're trying to expand and start serving our neighbors all over the country. Korihor is fictional, but the Church of Korihor is very real. I won't ask you to change what you believe. I won't even ask you to join our church. Will we help?
Like Korihor, I was lost and alone. Like Korihor, cast far from home. Like Korihor, they stole my voice. Like Korihor, left without a choice. But unlike Korihor, I can speak again. Unlike Korihor.
In any event, most of you have seen this, but I just wanted to. The reason why I'm sharing this before I go on to talk a little bit about the about what's really exciting and why I'm looking forward, particularly to 2026. There are all these comments that people have been making on this video. First was from this woman named Kirsten Morley. There's a person. Oh, I didn't realize she was so big. She has 500,000 followers. And she's an emotion code and body code person, which I remember thinking was interesting because I actually did a little bit of work for the guy who wrote the emotion code and body code. Can't say that I believe anything that guy says in his stuff. But I'll say this: you want to talk about somebody he's a Mormon who's also a chiropractor, as Mormons often are, and he makes a ton of money at that, and it was interesting. The New Age movement inside Mormonism is an interesting, provocative thing. Some of you know that, some of these more controversial figures do emotion code stuff. Anyways, but I thought it was interesting. She said, so obviously she's a Mormon, or from the Mormon paradigm. I don't think she is actually Mormon. Actually, looking at her content, it seems to me like she's probably Exmo. But she posted and said, "Is this satire?" And I responded and actually made a video response saying, "Nope, this is the Church of Korihors is not satire." That's the video I was showing you guys earlier. Somebody said you should probably pin this video to your page. It's very good. I said that's a good idea, and that's what we did. Love what you're doing. Keep it up. I said thank you. How do I join? Way to turn lemons into lemonade. It's an interesting comment, but heck, it's positive. I'll take it. This is awesome. Thank you for helping those in needs. That's my dear sister and one of our ordained luminaries, Nikki. A friend of mine who is a Christian says, "Buddy, you're showing more of what Jesus represented than most churches. You might not believe the same as me, but we have similar hearts, and that's what it all means. God bless you." And I said, "I'll take it. Thank you. I will. I'll take it." And then my friend Kirsten, I'm pretty sure this is Kirsten, not Megan. Kirsten, oh gosh, what's Kirsten's last name? Kirsten and Megan Connor now have a separate channel called Outer Snarkness, and I just love it. I love all their videos and comment on pretty much everything they do. I just think they're great. She says, "You are a greater example of Christ than any of the people standing in front of those giving machines." And I said, "I'll take it." Look, I've said many times before, when I'm out there delivering blankets and stuff, I get "God bless you" all the time. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. You're doing God's work. Jesus loves you. And how often do you think I say to this person, those people out there who would say that I'm just the founder of the atheist branch of Mormonism? Steve Heinecker, calling your ass out. How you doing, man? It's good to hope to talk to you again soon. As a matter of fact, I may call you today. I'll say this: how many of those people do you think I turned to and said, "Actually, I'm an atheist"? Can I tell you about how God is bullshit? How many of those people do you think I did that with? You already know, right? I hope you know. None. I don't do that. I spread the good word of atheism and Korohorism to people who already have lost their faith in God and want to have a spiritual journey that's liberated from God. But to go out and convince other people that their religion is wrong and mine is right, I got no interest in that. And it's the best missionary work I've ever done. It's way better missionary work than I ever did trying to convince Catholics in Peru to give up their religion and come over to Mormonism. So I love it. This is the kind of missionary work I wished I had been doing when I was Mormon. I would have gotten a lot fewer converts, not that I got that many anyways. I would have gotten a lot fewer converts, but I would have felt more every day like I was serving people. At the end of my mission to Peru, this was back in 2001, I basically stopped knocking on doors. I stopped looking for converts to the Mormon church about the time that I gave up my faith in God and realized I'm an atheist. I can't tell anybody. I'm agnostic, at least at the time I said agnostic, because the word atheist had already had such a foul taste in my mouth. Still kind of does, to be blunt with you. But what I always believed was an atheist, and that I thought, man, those people are they're really dark. They got a real darkness, hanging on to their souls. I came to realize that was now me, and it didn't feel like my soul was darkened by atheism. It felt like I had been betrayed by Mormonism, even though Mormonism was just there doing what it does, living on the same lies that it always has lived by. Well, it's added a few into it now. And now it gaslights people into thinking that it's the same lies as the rest of Christianity, which is also lies. Anyway, I got sick of being lied to, and I got sick of perpetuating other people's lies. And so I started going up and walking up to people in Peru, in the Amazon. I stopped knocking on doors and asking to give first discussions. I started walking up to people who were building their house, like building a second floor on their house, brick by brick, and asking, "Hey, can I come? Can I help?" And then I just started helping people build their house. And they'd be like, "How can I repay you? I don't have any money." And I'm like, I didn't ask for money. I remember this guy, I tell the story in the Korihor argument, which, by the way, I found the manuscript for the Korihor argument, and the second edition of the Korihor argument is underway. That's just last night. I told the story that, I went up to a guy and said, "Hermano, let me come up there and help you." And he says, "Why?" He says, "You can't help me." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "You're wearing a tie." All right, how about now? And my companion looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "We are going to help this man build his house." And he's like, "He doesn't even want to talk to us. He's not going to join the church." I said, "I don't care anymore." And I just started going out and helping people. And let me tell you, did that guy join the Mormon church? He did not. Was I upset or angry or frustrated about that? I was not, because I had purpose. I was serving people. And I thought that's what Jesus wanted me to do. Little did I realize, Jesus is not that great, man. Jesus sucks. But when people tell me that, God bless you and stuff like that, I take it. Anyway, I showed you all that to show you this. Which video was it? No, not that one. I want to show you this one, but I've wasted enough time playing you videos. Let's see here. Oh, okay, yeah, this one. So this is one of a series of videos, mostly videos I've been posting on YouTube. Well, yeah. Okay, so I met with Renee Steelman. That's what this video is up here. And in Draper, I found out that the coffee shop that we had picked, just kind of more or less at random because it was near where she was staying. I was in Draper at this coffee shop.
Just finished a great interview with Renee Steelman from She Became Visible. Great conversation, but I wanted to mention this coffee shop. It's called La Barba, and it has meeting rooms. It's in Utah County. I'm just curious.
Okay, it's not
in my Utah County.
And my friend, once again, Jesse Stay, who we've got to get involved with this. Jesse's pretty cool people. If you guys don't know, I met Jesse while I was doing videos about Tim Ballard. He used to work for Operation Underground Railroad, doing their digital marketing, and their tech side. Basically, he was like, Jesse Stay used to work for the Mormon Church, revamping all their social media so that they stayed relevant in a day and age when all social media related to Mormonism was anti-Mormons. And so the church wanted a presence. And so Jesse was the guy who came up with a tech Mormon. He was at that time a member of the church. I think he still is technically on the records of the church, but he's not practicing. He's an ex-Mormon. And so the church basically hired him as a consultant to revamp their social media. From there, he basically he worked with the apostles. He worked with the 12. And from there, he got kind of farmed out to Tim Ballard at Operation Underground Railroad and bought into the whole thing. Like, oh yeah, we're out there, we're saving kids, Sound of Freedom bullshit. But met Tim Ballard, worked with Tim Ballard. Firsthand, worked with his people there, even worked with what's his bucket, Elizabeth Smart's dad, Ed Smart, at the time when Ed Smart came out of the closet, same time. And he's friends with Ed Smart. And great interview was with him talking about, and he's like, basically Tim Ballard is a narcissistic asshole. I'm like, well, I mean, not that we didn't know, but it's good to hear somebody say it who knows him. Anyways, that guy Jesse, he's been commenting a lot on my videos. We've been reconnecting. I told him, one of my replies to him is, dude, let's just go get a beer. Let's stop interacting on here. Let's just go get a beer. He's a great guy. But yeah, so here's a comment. I'm in Lehigh, count me in. But as and another person, wish I lived in Utah to say yes. Somebody says invite me. All I did was to post that we have a church for atheists and godless people, and now we have a place to meet for $25 an hour. We can have a meeting in Salt Lake County, Utah County. Jesse was the one who pointed out to me. Draper is in Salt Lake County. Okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, fine, whatever. The point is, it's easy to get to from pretty much anywhere in Utah County or Salt Lake County. It's very centrally located. So I'm like, let's do this thing. Thank you. I'll take this comment. I like that. So I was like, and so I'm like, this is amazing. We can get together, have meetings, and just, and start doing in-person church services instead of just online like we're doing here. Not that I don't love it here, but we can do online from a meeting we do in person. So I'm traveling around anyways. Let's get together and get some of these people in person and start building community in person. All I did was to post that video saying we can do this. And I'm already getting comments from people saying, invite me, I want to come. So it's plausible that after a year of building the Church of Korihor and doing, and building all the materials and the website and, what the clergy looks like and what the canon looks like and getting registered with the state of Utah and getting registered with the IRS and dealing with tax stuff and dealing with everything. Finally, we're talking about having in-person meetings. Ever since I went to Albuquerque and met with Mary Beth, I realized this community has to start doing in-person meetings, because just being in the presence of this woman, just being near her, looking in her eyes, seeing and meeting her family, seeing her home, meeting her delightful children, just having a brief couple hours, because Mary Beth, you guys don't know, so I preached a godless sermon on Sunday. On my second godless sermon from the streets was not on the street. It was in the rocks of Moab. It was a gorgeous setting. I really wished you all were there. I was there preaching to my phone in Moab, Utah, to a bunch of red rocks, and just thinking, God, I wish you guys were here because it's so gorgeous. I'm not usually a desert person because I'm from Arizona. So no prophet is loved in his own country. Well, no prophet loves his own country, and I'm no prophet. But Moab, guys, Moab is gorgeous. And I was out there, weather was beautiful. I'm like, God, I wish that the Korihors were here. I really wish we were holding in-person meetings here. But in any event, I recorded on my phone, went into town to post it over the 5G wireless. I had 5G, but because the whole sermon was an hour and a half long, it just wasn't uploading. So I said, well, I guess for the first Sunday in a long time, I just had no godless sermon to send out. And I was disappointed. I was pretty disappointed in myself. But I had just done that street sermon at a general conference. So I was like, well, at least I had done that yesterday. Anyway, I drove to Albuquerque from Moab after I had a lovely lunch with my friend Kate Kendrick from Two Nomos, which may or may not have been a date. Anyway, but I went down to Albuquerque and I met just to see Mary Beth. Basically, I was headed out to Virginia. I was headed out to Tulsa to preach on the streets of Tulsa, and then eventually to arrive in Virginia and be with my partner out there. And I sat down with Mary Beth, who took me to lunch, treated me to a very nice New Mexico lunch, and then invited me to her home to use her Wi-Fi and to post the Godless sermon. And just getting to know this woman over a couple of hours, realized we got some amazing people connected to the Church of Korihor. And I got to get people in person in these local communities. We got to get people put together. Anyway, wanted to show you this. I haven't even gotten to the stuff I wanted to show you about this. Okay, so I posted this video saying there's a coffee shop that we can start meeting and holding meetings.
Fair point. I don't know why. In my head, Draper seems like Utah County just because it's
This is that comment from Jesse Stay.
really so central to Utah and Salt Lake counties. Anyway.
So without going over that whole thing, basically this video is about how if I had a meeting in person, if we held meetings in person in Utah for people to come in and leave the and formally sign the documents to leave the Mormon church in person, something that I've been looking at doing for a while here since I came down here to St. George, and this is now my folks' address is now my official address, even though I'm probably going to spend a lot of time in Virginia and on the road. This is basically my base of operations, at least as far as it, legally speaking. Is that I learned that here in Utah, I can become a mobile notary for pretty inexpensive, and I think it's like $100. And I started looking to see what's interesting about that. We started the Church of Korihors so that other people could get excommunicated, like I was excommunicated. Because to get excommunicated for apostasy in the Mormon Church, you either have to teach people things that cause them to doubt the doctrines as taught by the brethren, and or leave the church. So either you have to teach apostasy, or you have to join another church. And those are significant now, because in 2024, when what drove the final nail into the coffin of my delay in starting a new church for atheists was when I read on Reddit that somebody who said, I'm so pissed off and frustrated because I went to quitmormon.com, which is how most people, I'm pretty sure most people who actually formally leave the church, the Mormon church today, do it, is that you go to this pro bono attorney's website and you fill out all the paperwork on the website. Then it forwards you from there to a notary, to an online notary, which could be somebody in Utah, but it might be they might be somewhere else. And then that person, you have to provide them with your documents. You have to pay them, I think it's like $15 or $20 or something. And then you get these documents notarized, and then he sends I think his name is Nagel, the man's name, don't know his first name. Great guy, great service this guy provides. It's a nonprofit service, but you have to pay the notary. You have to pay for the notarization for the notary. It's not the right word. But anyways, you have to have it notarized, and you have to send it he sends it into the church. And then supposedly, if the church kicks it back and says, no, we won't let you go, there's a process where you can appeal and say, wait a minute, you legally have to let us resign, which is true. In one court case, it was determined that the Mormon church and any church has to allow you to resign from the church. Legally, they must allow you to resign from the organization. And if you send them a resignation and they can confirm that it is you, they have to let you go without excommunicating you. And but then there was another legal case where it was determined that the church does have to comply. It was something like, don't quote me on this. This isn't. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. It was something like the church has to let you leave the church, but if they excommunicate you, that's their business, and the state can't tell them that they can't. So basically you got these two different legal interpretations, as I understand it, and I may be wrong. But I saw last year, I saw this post by a woman on Reddit who said, I'm so pissed because I went through that whole process and got the notary, and sent in this letter, and then I got a notice back from my bishop saying, we understand somebody tried in your name to resign you from the church. Just thought you should know somebody out there is stealing your identity. And she's like, I haven't been to church in X amount of months or years or whatever it was. And it's like, you guys know that's me. I'm trying to leave. And she's like, and now they want to meet with me. They want to talk about how if you were really to leave the church, we were going to have a court of love and have you effectively. And I realized, holy shit, is this really happening? And I posted on, I think it was Mormon Stories Facebook group, which is an interesting story in itself right now. Something about, hey, is anybody else having this problem? And I started to get responses from people saying, I had that problem too. I used quitmormon.com. You filled out all the paperwork, sent it and got it notarized, sent it into the church, and the church kicked it back, or sent it to my bishop and said, you need to go out and collect this person, try and keep them in the church. You need to start ministering to this person and try and get them to come back to church. And I was pissed. Because I'm like, wait a minute. All that happened with me, those of you who know my story, this is a brief recap. I was an ex-Mormon in name only for 10 years. I wasn't on my name still on the records of the church, had no intention of actually resigning from the church or spoiling for an excommunication, though really honestly, if to put it quite bluntly, I had more than once flirted with making myself known to the brethren so that they would excommunicate me. My wife got disciplined by the church because she'd had sex with a woman. And then I had told her, I said, just go to them and tell them that, your husband's a pervert and he likes it, and they'll give you your temple recommend back, which is exactly what happened. Then her bishop contacted me or told her, your husband needs to come in and see me in person because because he has spiritually murdered you. And I want to have a confrontation with him. He obviously thought I wouldn't do it. I did. He brings in the whole bishopric so that they can find out that, my wife is bisexual and I apparently am a pervert who likes that. No notes. They come in and I tell them, sure, yeah, that's me. I'm a pervert. Don't punish my wife for my perversions. And yeah. And he told me, you're going to leave the church. He said, how do you think God feels about that? And I said, I don't much care. And he said, do you believe in God? And I said, no. And he said, you can't be a Mormon and not believe in God. I said, I agree. But I've been ex-Mormon for 10 years. If I remove my name from the records of the church, or even better, get excommunicated, it'd break my mother's heart. And he said, and he was my mom's bishop as well. We lived in my parents and my family and my parents, we split a house at that time. And he said, your mom could live for 20 years. I said, oh, at least. I said, I can wait. And he's like, I can't. He's like, you will resign from the church today. I said, you don't get to do that. You don't get to tell me to do that. And he said, you will resign from the church today, or I'll submit you to be excommunicated. Okay, do that. I'd prefer that. A week later, I was excommunicated from the Mormon church, and it's one of the best things I ever did in my life. It's still one of the best things I ever did in my life. Look, I understand. I just want to make an appeal to you guys, because this is where I am going to sermonize a little bit here. I totally get people who say, I don't want this barbaric practice. I don't want this this experience where the church kicks you out and shames you, et cetera, et cetera. I totally understand, and I require this of absolutely no one. I'm not going to encourage anybody to do this who doesn't want it. But I can tell you this right now, for me, all my life, I figured that if I ever left the church, they would kick me out and excommunicate me, and I would get a chance to give them a piece of my mind and tell them why Mormonism is bullshit, why God is bullshit. And I had always worried, if I find out that God is not real, if I lose my faith in God, this church will be the most vile and corrupt and awful organization in the world, and I will have so much beef with them. To just slip out in the night and disassociate myself from them would leave me with this fire in the belly that would just eat me alive. I would much rather they kicked me out. So he submitted me to be excommunicated. I met with my stake president, President Mitchell, great guy, super nice, tons of respect. 1 week later, literally, I was kicked out of the Mormon church, and I felt great about it. For me, it was a healthy and productive thing, and a significant step forward in my spiritual healing from religious trauma, and also my personal growth as an individual, which is how I regard spirituality, is my growth as a person. And it was fantastic for me. Getting kicked out of the Mormon church is one of the greatest spiritual things I've ever done. And maybe not the most spiritually significant thing. The most spiritually significant thing I ever did was to do a mushrooms trip, or 4 of them. Anyway, 4 or 5. Another spiritually significant thing, and this is for me, was to adopt ethical non-monogamy. That's just for me. That's for me. I don't preach that, but for me, it was good. It was very good. Anyways, so the point is this: my stake president came to my office in American Fork. And this was a few months before I published the Korihor argument. And he came to my office and he asked me, he said, "I don't have anything to excommunicate you for." And I said, "Oh, all right. Well, why not apostasy?" And he's like, "Apostasy?" I said, "Yeah, apostasy, or conduct unbecoming a member of the church. Isn't that what everybody gets kicked out for these days? Isn't that how it does?" I'm like, you could kick me out for word of wisdom, I guess, for drinking or something. And he's like, "No, we don't do that." I was like, "Oh, okay." That's when he asked me, and I know it's weird that I go on about this a lot, but it is something that's I'm intimately connected to, not because I believe in it, but because I know a lot of people do, and I see a lot of hurt. I see a lot of hurt that the Mormon church and other churches and even Islam, some of these Islamic clerics, are perpetrating in the world about this. So this is gonna be an affront. Porn addiction is not real. It is not real. Sex addiction is not real. I'm not requiring anybody to believe it. I'm just gonna say, look it up. I did a great interview for my documentary Mormon Sex that I really need to finish that documentary, with Nicole Prouse, who is the doctor who published all the data through a UCLA based study that showed that there was no brain activity correlation between drug addiction and people who are hypersexual, or who look at porn and masturbate a lot. And I'm not one of these people who has to do that to get on with my day. I don't, and I know that compulsive behavior is something that a lot of people struggle with. But compulsive behaviors are something that you can treat psychologically, and it is something that you have to understand your triggers, and it is very specific, the kind of treatment that compulsive behaviors need. And to go into 12-step programs like the church has, like many churches have, for so-called porn addiction, is one of the most harmful things I have witnessed. I see it again and again now. The ecclesiastical abuse that's being perpetrated, especially on men who are, and young men as young as 12, 13, 14 years old, children who are being forced in groups to talk about their sexualization and their sexual development with strangers, and to appeal to God to forgive them, and to liberate them as if they were drug addicts. It is disgusting. And I have friends and men, I've talked about this, and maybe nobody cares like I do. I'm sure that's not true. I see the ecclesiastical abuse, especially on men and young men in this church, when it comes to this, and it makes me downright furious. It makes me goddamn furious. Anyway, I hate ecclesiastical abuse so much. I hate it. As somebody who was a victim of ecclesiastical abuse, as somebody, to my shame, perpetrated ecclesiastical abuse in the world, I cannot abide it. And it's embarrassing to talk about. It's not easy for me. And every time I talk about it, I go, shit, should I have just kept my mouth shut about that? And every time I think, no, somebody has to talk about this. It is wrong. In any event, my stake president asked me if I was addicted to porn. And I said, why? And I said, no. I didn't go off on my usual tirade about that's not a thing. But he said, I said, why? And he's like, oh, that's adultery. And we could excommunicate you for that. And that's when I was like, oh, he thinks because my wife is bi and that I just sit around, choking the bishop all day. Not their bishop, my bishop. I'm like, she's bi because she's bi. That's about her. And people are bi. It turns out that's not so weird, dude. And so he, I don't want to talk too much about that because, of course, she's now my ex-wife, and I love her dearly. Spent the last week with her and my kids, and we had a great time. Spent the holidays together, and I love my ex-wife. I still do. I very much love my ex-wife. Anyway, but I said, just kick me out for apostasy. And he's like, you don't get kicked out for apostasy unless you join another church. Now, I had heard about this clause. I had read in the priesthood manual this clause that did say that if you convert to another church, the Mormons will kick you out for apostasy as well. But that's almost a byline in the priesthood leadership manual. Mainly, apostasy is teaching false doctrine and causing people to doubt the brethren and their official doctrine, the official correlated doctrine of the church, and or leave the church. And I said, my understanding is that apostasy or conduct unbecoming a member of the church is either some major moral infraction, or is this or anything that causes other people, teaching people anything that causes them to leave the church. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, technically that would be apostasy, but you have to have actually taught somebody something that causes them to have significant doubts about the church or to leave the church. And I looked at him and I said, I'm telling you to your face, looking you in the eye, and I'm telling you, President Mitchell, I have told dozens of people, and I will tell hundreds or thousands if I can, that Joseph Smith Jr. was a pedophile, that Joseph Smith Jr. was a fraud, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is an abusive and wicked organization. And he said, really? Oh, yeah. Apostasy then. I said, great. We shook hands. Great guy. Haven't seen him in a long time. I hope he hasn't passed on. Jeff Mitchell, I think is his name. I don't know. Anyway, President Mitchell from American Fork. And I used to run into him at Home Depot. We, clap each other on the back. The man excommunicated me from the church. I got the letter. You guys have seen the letter, right? Anyway, I was excommunicated for apostasy. But as you can tell, that's not, I've just told you all this story. I didn't even get to the point where I stood up in front of 15 high priests of the Mormon church and ranted to them in my defense for like 20, 30 minutes about the reasons why I think that the Mormon church is bullshit. And I didn't know, apart from President Mitchell, I didn't know one person in that room from Adam besides my father and the bishop who were there as witnesses. And I told them off, and then I was excommunicated. And I got to find the recording. I have the recording of it. I had at one point I had published it because I read my statement off of my iPad, which was a ruse. I could have just gone off. You guys know I can just talk, right? It was a ruse because I was actually recording the whole thing on my iPad. And so I took that recording and I published it on my old podcast, Mormon Sex. Anyways, so, but now I can't find it. I have a hard drive that I'm fairly certain it's on there. Anyways, so yeah, so I was excommunicated from the Mormon Church. And it was painful, but it was also good and healthy. I get why people don't want to go through that process. My friend, I was there to support my friend Jeremy Reynolds. Jeremy, call me or talk to me, call me, text me. I miss you, man. I haven't talked to you in a long time. If you ever see this, I miss you, man. Jeremy Reynolds, as you probably may know, wrote the CES letter, and he and I got pretty friendly for a while. And I was there for him. I was there outside the building when he was excommunicated after I was. And no, nobody knew that I was being excommunicated. Nobody knew who I was. But anyway, I was there when Kate Kelly, I'm not there in person, but Kate Kelly was excommunicated not far from where I lived at the time. Kate Kelly, previously of Ordained Women, who I also got to know. And I love that she's coming back into prominence inside the Mormon paradigm. I hope to reconnect with her. I have so much respect for this woman. I think Kate Kelly is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, frankly. And I have pictures that I've taken with her and stuff. I think she's remarkable. Anyway, all of us excommunicate from the church. It is a difficult and painful process, but technically they can do it in absentia, where they just meet. They send you a notice saying you can go to that. We've decided to confront you basically with what's called a court of love. At least it was in my time, or disciplinary court, church court. And then you have to come in and they basically judge you on whether or not you are worthy to be a member of the church. But you have to have done something significant. Like I said, they have to be able to demonstrate that you have taught false doctrine, or what's in their mind false doctrine, and caused people to doubt or leave the church. One. Or two, you have to join another church. But most people who become ex-Mormons, or want to be ex-Mormons, want to leave the church, and want to officially leave the church, they become atheists, agnostics, or non-religious. They become nuns, not with a U, but with an O and an E, and other letters too. And I said, what church do you join to be godless? There's no church for that, in spite of what people will tell you. There is no atheist religion. I wish there were, because then everybody who became an atheist could just be excommunicated from the Mormon church in absentia without even having to go in and go through the process of a church court like I went through. And then they just send you a letter saying you've been found to be apostate. This happened to my aunt. Both my aunts. I grew up knowing that my Aunt Abby and my Aunt Cindy were roommates. It wasn't until I was 16, on my 16th birthday, that my mother informed me, that your Aunt Abby is gay. And I said, what? And she said, come on, Joe, are you serious? I'm like, well, I just thought, I did think that it was awkward for poor her and Aunt Cindy, that they had to, that they were roommates and they had to actually share a bedroom in a house where they have more bedrooms. I don't understand. And they were raising my cousin Antonio. Good boy. Lovely boy. Love that boy. He's not a boy anymore. He's a man. We grew up, my cousin, we called him David at the time. He was adopted from Honduras and we just loved him. Anyway, we do love him. Anyway, my Aunt Abby and my Aunt Cindy, they lived here in Utah, where my Aunt Abby used to get death threats on the radio, because when she ran the women's, I'm just going to say the word. If the live gets taken down, guys, don't be alarmed. My Aunt Abby ran the Rape Crisis Center in Utah. She's an activist and a lesbian. and a proud Latina. I'm one of the most beautiful, noble people I've ever known in my life. And she would go on the radio all the time to tell people, women here in Utah, if your husband makes you afraid for your life, that's abuse. Get away from him. If you need a place to go, come to the crisis center and we will help you. And she used to get threats from leaders in the church, not top leaders, but like local leaders from here in Utah, would call and threaten her, saying, how dare you break up good families? These are eternal families. You're breaking apart. And she'd say, these are women who are being abused. And in many cases, they are being raped. They don't want sex with their husband, and the church makes them feel like they have to do it. That's non-consensual. That's right. Done. And this woman, she stood up. And in Utah, the church which she was a member of, technically, even though she didn't practice, obviously, and her wife, my lovely Aunt Cindy, beautiful woman, I still miss every day. She was taken. She's gone. They were living in Utah for decades, married, according to the state of New York, not recognized here in Utah at the time. And nobody did anything. They didn't want it. I mean, here in Utah, nobody wanted, the ecclesiastical leaders, they didn't want anything to do with kicking out an activist from the church. Who knows why? Then they moved to Arizona, where we lived, where my family was from. And as soon as the records were moved into a new ward, the bishop down there in Mesa sent missionaries, sent home teachers or state missionaries or somebody, sent representatives of the church to my aunt Abby and Aunt Cindy's home. They said, we saw that you moved into the ward. And they're like, you did? How did you see that? Well, somebody moved your records. And then they realized, looking at my Aunt Abby and my Aunt Cindy, why nobody knew, why they had moved into the ward and hadn't been seen at church since they moved into the ward. The Mormon church is super creepy with the way it keeps track of its people, by the way. Look it up if you don't know. And if you move, people in your church, in the community, go spying to find out where you live, where you moved to, so that they can move your records to your new area and send somebody to your house to bring you back into the fold. Unless, of course, you're a couple of lesbians, in which case they kicked my Aunt Abby and Cindy, my Aunt Abby, my Aunt Cindy out for apostasy, because the church didn't at that time officially kick people out for being gay. So my Aunt Abby, my Aunt Cindy were kicked out of the church, and it was traumatic for them, even though neither of them, even though they were both atheists, they were both ex-Mormons, but the church had no animus against them while they were in Utah. It wasn't until they moved to Arizona that somebody said, no, we're kicking you out of the church. We don't want your kind. And so anyways, why did I go up on that rant? Anyways, but there are a lot of people who want to leave the church, but don't want to go through the painful process of showing up in person to the church court of love and have that confrontation with the brethren. All they want is to leave. And then quitmormon.com has been a great tool, is a great tool. I tell people to use it all the time. My ex-wife used quitmormon.com to leave. Most of my partners that I have had, because I've dated almost exclusively ex-Mormons since my wife and I opened up our marriage 8 years ago. And most of them have used quitmormon.com. Most of my friends who have officially left the church have used quitmormon.com. But in 2024, we started seeing more and more that people were saying that they sent in their records through their resignation letter through quitmormon.com, and the church kicked it back and said, and sent representatives of the church to come back to try and persuade them to come back to the church. And it was traumatizing. And as you can imagine, if you send off that paperwork and go, good, that's fine. Any moment, any minute now, I'm going to get a letter. Any day now, I'm going to get a letter from the church saying that they've received the request to resign from the church, and then they'll, and then this ordeal will finally be over. Thank goodness for Mr. Nagel, Charles Nagel, whatever, for the Esquire, Mr. Quitmormon.com Esquire. Thank goodness for this attorney creating this beautiful organization, this beautiful nonprofit organization that does this. And I encourage people to use it. Please use it. It's great. It's a great tool. I just want you to be aware. Don't get discouraged if the church doesn't recognize it, because lately they've been in a bit of a mood because I'm not going to tell you why they're in a mood. You can guess. In any event, I posted this video this week. Okay. Not promoted. Didn't pay to promote this one. This is on TikTok. Okay. I'm going back to this. This is one of the videos I posted to say, I think we should have events at the Church of Korihor. I recognize that, we have a sacrament where you can join our church, and I will send your certificate of conversion to the Church of Korihor, to your bishop, and to the central records of the church, saying this person is converted to Korihorism. They are Korihors till the day they die, according to the oath they have sworn. I am the witness of it. My name is Joe Rollins, first herald of the Church of Korihor. Your rules say that you're supposed to kick them out for apostasy. I want you to know, on behalf of my congregation, we have the same rule. They cannot be a member of your church and be a member of ours. Kick them out. It's in your bylaws that you have to do it. And so far we haven't gotten any kickback from the church about that, but then I've only sent a couple in. My understanding so far has been that of the couple that I have sent in for people who have joined the Church of Korihor, is that they haven't heard anything. But in any event, I created the Church of Korihor in part because I wanted people to have an opportunity to have a soft place to land after leaving Mormonism and other high demand religions, and grow spiritually as people, and in community, and have community and have everything that you once had with church, but this time with an organization that's committed not to lie to you, and where we are committed to developing your spiritual development as a person, and to growing and figuring out all the ways in which we can fail as people and still become better because of it. And at the same time, you join our church, the Mormon church has to kick you out for apostasy. The same rule, by the way, exists in the Jehovah's Witnesses. You join our church, according to them, you are an apostate, and they will kick your ass out. How great is that? Same thing is true about the Seventh-day Adventists, as far as I understand, anyways. Same thing is true about the Scientologists, as far as I understand. It's the same thing. You join our church, they will kick you out of theirs. Great. And so, but at the same time, I know that there are a lot of people out there. Since I started the Church of Korihor, this is what I have learned in the past year. For a lot of people, the very existence of the word church, after they have been in a high demand religion, a high demand church, the very word church is triggering. They don't want church. And especially a lot of women don't want church. They don't want anything to do with church. And that, I think, is part of what we are seeing with with this pushback on John Dehlin at Mormon Stories, saying that he thinks that he misses the Mormon church, and telling the Mormons that he would come back if they would annul his excommunication, which startled me. And since on Mormon Discussions, I heard RFM and Bill Reel talking pretty boldly, well, more Bill Reel than RFM, about how they wish there was a church they could go back to, or that maybe we needed to start a new church. And I went, Bush, I don't know about that, fellas. If you need a church, if you need a church for people who have left church, I tried not to comment too much because I'm like, well, you guys are talking about going into competition with me now because the Church of Korihors exists, and but we're a church for godless people, and I think I don't presume to know that Bill Reel or RFM or John DeLynn or anybody else are agnostic or atheist. I've asked John, who kind of gave me a soft agnostic answer. I know that Bill Reel has said in the past, or my understanding from other podcasters is that Bill Reel has said that he is an atheist, but that was a while ago, and maybe their feelings have changed. And I'm like, you know what? More power to them. If they want to start a new Christian church or they want to go back to the Mormon church, more power to them. I wish them all the luck. And if it's because they miss the patriarchy, I mean, in my perspective, fuck that noise. We ordain women. We're ecstatic about ordaining women. We ordain gay people. We ordain trans people at the Church of Korihor, and we love them. And we're building community with people who, frankly, the fact that our first herald right now is a man is just an unhappy coincidence because, frankly, I mean, hell, I don't personally feel I identify with the paradigm of being a man in half the time anyway. So this is a biological coincidence. But in any event, and I have said many times, my greatest ambition for the Church of Korihor is one day, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will have a poll. We'll have an election in the Church of Korihor, which, according to our bylaws, every year, if somebody else wants to step forward who is a herald, or you know, if people want one of our heralds, which we only have one at the moment, unfortunately, to step forward and become the first herald of the Church of Korihor, it's very plausible I would be the second, third, fourth herald of the Church of Korihor, and no longer the leader. Well, a leader, but not the leader. And I not only am aware of that may happen, it is my fondest and wildest dream that one day that will happen. That one day I will slip into a Church of Korihor meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Pocatello, Idaho, in San Diego, California, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Phoenix, Arizona, in New York, in Scotland, in England. I will slip into a meeting somewhere of the Church of Korihor and just sit, hopefully on something comfy, like a beanbag, like a love sack or something. That's what I think. I think do it with pews. Let's do it like comfy beanbags. So that's my opinion. And I will slip into a meeting somewhere, an in-person meeting, and somebody will elbow the other one. Somebody sitting next to them and go, "You see that guy that just slipped in the back? Yeah, that's the guy that started this whole church." What? No, it isn't. Yeah, that's like my fantasy. And I will just sit there and I will participate like everybody else. And I'll just be a part of the community like everybody else. And I love it. That's how non-patriarchal this is. For me, that is the exact opposite of patriarchal. And anybody who calls me a prophet of the atheist Mormon church, I want to slap them with the side of the head. Anyway, look at these comments. Okay, so I posted this video saying, I think we should have events for the Church of Korihor all throughout Utah. And I will become a notary so that we have a notary at every one of these events. And I will go up and down the state of Utah holding events where we notarize in person your documents saying your letter of resignation saying that you want to leave the church. And I'll personally notarize it. And if we don't do it that way, then we'll get a notary to be there. But one of the reasons that as I understand it. Oh, I heard my mother scream. She's laughing. I was worried she fell. All right. Sorry. One of the reasons why apparently the Mormon church has been kicking back people's resignations is because they're notarized online through quitmormon.com. The attorney who runs these He's a good man, but he doesn't have time to sit here and meet with every person who tries to leave the church through quitmormon.com and sit there and fill out all the paperwork and notarize it. He's an attorney. He's got a career. He's got his own practice. He just does this on the side as a service to other non-Mormons. I don't know if other ex-Mormons. I don't know if he himself is ex-Mormon. I don't even know. But in any event, he doesn't have time to meet with everybody and get all these documents notarized. So he has them use an online notary. So I said, this is what we'll do. We'll have in-person meetings, and we'll make a day of it. We'll sing hymns, or we'll do overview. We'll do sermons. We'll broadcast. We'll sit and visit. And there's some sacraments that I've been working on for people who want to release religious trauma, who want to release ecclesiastical abuse and trauma around it, that we've been working on. And also where we can do fundraisers, where we raise money for our missions, particularly. Right now, we're working on that. In February, we're doing a silent auction here in St. George, where we're going to have people who can bid on art created by artists like me. This is going to be my first painting pro, is going to be my submission into it. We so far have, I don't want to talk too much about this. I've been encouraged not to, but we have several artists, other artists who have asked to be allowed to donate artwork into our show, into this silent auction. We're going to have at the event a special trauma releasing ceremony where people can, that we've been working on. Nikki, my sister and chosen family, and luminary for the Church of Korihors, and I have been working on developing a special ceremony for people to release trauma. We're going to try it out. We'll experiment with it, and we'll make it better. We'll improve upon it. And I'm super excited about it. We can start doing ceremonies in person where we help and where we actually fulfill our mission here of making lives worth living by helping people who have left high demand religion groups to quit those churches. Mormonism, yes, but Jehovah's Witnesses, absolutely. My heart breaks every day. I think about it. I hope that this, that we clip this. I hope that out there, a Jehovah's Witness who feels trapped in your religion, in your church, like so many of us from the Mormon tradition have been in ours, will see this and know that you are not alone. I know, and we have been watching, especially in the ex-Mormon world, at the trauma you have been dealing with and the abuse that has been happening to you from the time you were children. And we are furious about it. And we want you to know that you are not alone and that you have a community if you want one. If you want to get out of that paradigm and you want to escape the God of the Jehovah's Witnesses, you want to escape Jehovah, well, the Church of Korihors is for you, my friend, and we will be here for you. And if you join our church, super. And if not, fine. Come to one of our meetings and at least participate in our spiritual practice of releasing religious trauma. And I hope you're well, my friend. Same thing for Seventh-day Adventists. Same thing for Scientologists. Same thing for people from the what do they call it? The Apostolic Order. All these charismatic evangelicals. Clip that. Clip this. All these ecclesiastical people out there. All of these. All of you Christians out there who find yourselves in high demand groups, whether it's the preterists, whether it's, whatever it may be, who are sick and tired of the abuse and hurt that you are feeling in your church. On behalf of myself and all these other ex-Mormons, I want you to know that we feel you and that you do not suffer alone, and that we will work with you, and we will provide you with opportunities for spiritual directorship if that's what you need, and for therapy if that's what you need. And, we're not going to provide it ourselves. We're going to refer you to people who are professionals for it. And if you need somebody to be a spiritual guide who can help you to plot the course of what your spiritual healing from ecclesiastical abuse and religious trauma looks like. I am Joe Rollins, first herald of the Church of Korihors, and this is what I dedicate my life to now. I don't make any money out of it. I do it because I'm passionate about it. Not that I won't take a stipend from the church once it's big enough that it can actually sustain it. But right now, I pay the church and not the other way around. But I'm passionate about this. I believe in us. I believe that we can do this. I believe that we can free people from an abusive system that's hurting them. That's why these comments on this video have really touched my heart. This person, Sola Scriptura, obviously a Catholic, or well, I don't know, probably a Catholic, or either that or some snarky ex-Catholic account on TikTok, says you have to have your change of faith notarized, and I answered in duplicates, and then all of these comments from other people, including ex-Mormons. Please also take the steps to unbind yourself spiritually from them, much more important than physically removing your name. I had posted a video reply to this saying, please tell me what you mean by that. Turns out it's a Christian person who wants us all to declare that Christ is king or something like that. But I was disappointed with that. I'm like, oh, I like this. What your plan? Because we have something like that. Chris Rollins, don't know if this person is any relation. He says they've had mass resignations days before. It's a great idea. The church office refuses to give me my excommunication record. Can I sue? Oh, don't pay attention to that one. Actually, that's somebody we know about. Annie Nicole is a friend of mine, more than a friend. I won't get into that. I'm still Mormon, she says. I sent in my resignation along with hubbies, and they told us no. That one pisses me off. Annie Nicole was my first fiance. That pisses me off. You should see if you could do this at or around the Thrive events. Let's not talk about that. But that is a very good idea. This person says, I would come. This person is my friend, Whitney. Is it true they still keep your records even after resignation? Who's to say they don't actually count you when they're doing the numbers? I said, both good questions. Who even knows? That's been a thing, is that for a while now, there's been some suspicion that when the Mormon Church publishes their records and claims that they have 15, 16, 17 million people, even though leaked internal documents show it's actually somewhere between 2 and 4 million. Okay. It's like between 2 million and 4 million is the assumption at this point. And they made up 13 million people. But people go to church and see empty pews. People go to the temple since, Russell M. Nelson had to build 500 temples, 600 temples, and they're empty. They don't have enough people to work them. They're starting to have to call senior missionaries and single men, which they didn't used to do, men who were in their 40s and 50s and unmarried for whatever reason, and call them back out to go on a mission to serve in temples that no one goes to. They have to make up Mormons out of whole cloth right now. And the assumption has been for a while, they may just still be counting those of us who have been excommunicated. They may still be counting us on their records. Legally, I think if somebody were to prove that, I think legally we'd have a case. We'd have a case for a class action lawsuit or something. But anyway, there is some there are some people who feel pessimistic or cynical about quitting the church because they're worried that the church may still count them. I can't tell you that doesn't happen. All I can tell you is this: I can get you a document. We can get you a document that says you quit the church and that according to the law, they are supposed to let you go. And that I can tell you, as somebody who has a letter like that, it's a very gratifying thing. I used to have it framed. I had to throw the frame away when I moved out of the house. but I have that letter with me everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I have my resignation letter. Bro, tell me when and where. I'm tired of the missionaries showing up at my door. They've actually been very persistent. I want a copy of my church records first, says this person. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'm sure we can get that. Had mine notarized at the bank, says Rachel. So glad I left. Deanna says, me, let's do it. Like you don't know, says they started making you notarize after all those people left by a quit Mormon. They actually have always it's always been advised that you get your letter of resignation notarized. Attorneys would generally tell people, like, if you're going to do this, you're going to go through the effort of actually trying to leave the church, get it notarized, and then they would have you do it in triplicate, which I'm thinking is what we're going to do. From my understanding, this is still the most sure way to get the church to remove your name from the records. You sign 3 copies of the letter and have them notarized. We're gonna have to figure out how to keep the cost down on that, because I think mobile notaries are supposed to charge you for every signature no matter what. But I can't say that I know that for sure. I'm going to take the course, and then I'll know that for sure. But then you get each document and each letter notarized. You keep one for your personal records, not a copy of it, but an individual letter that's signed and notarized. You keep one in your records. You send one to your local ecclesiastical authorities, your bishop or stake president, and then you send one to the central records department of the church. And then that way, all of them. Is it buffering? Somebody out there, do you guys see me? Somebody, am I frozen? Let me know. I'll wait in the comments until I know otherwise. I'm just going to keep going. It's Utah County with more swinging, somebody says about Draper. Kathleen Jean says, love this idea. I'm not living in Utah, though. I told them our show's on the road. We can come to you. My friend Jesse, that didn't have anything to do with it. Sean says, that's awesome. Sandburglar says, before I resign, I want my tithing money back. Good luck on that. I sincerely, I wish you all the luck in the world. I want to see what these files look like, the information they keep. It's not generally anything surprising. Comedy Church has done this at some of their shows. I didn't know that. I think I had heard that. Anyways, Marisol says the leadership refusing to allow you to leave isn't a clear indication of a cult at all. Maybe we should have a mass resignation event. Oh, some Mormon commented on this. Maybe we should have a mass resignation event to leave your church. Not necessary. You can just email me and tell me you don't want to be a member of the church, and I'll send you a big fuck you. Why would you? I'm just kidding. I will send you a certificate if you want to leave the church of Korihor. Why would your church do something like this? Maybe you should teach love and respect for other religions. Can you see the Church of Jesus Christ doing this? I mean, effectively, they do that, actually. They do the same thing. Anyways, no big deal. I find Mormon comments amusing on these things. Resignation formally is like leaving Oz. It further validates their pretend land and world. First step, leave. Second step, if they harass you, say you want a permanent, never expiring DNC, do not contact on your church record. And if they violate you, you'll file legal harassment charges. Leaving coercive control is a tougher challenge. So I don't know what freedomofmind.com is. I'm not platforming that, but I mean, there are people who feel this way, and this is a legit thing. Oh, I'm reading comments. Apparently I didn't minimize myself. Sorry. I was a mailman the day they announced children of gay people couldn't be baptized. I must have collected 25 letters on my route addressed to the church records office that day. Says this is one of these comments. Do it. I want to get away from it, says Chadosaurus Rex. Chadosaurus Rex. Okay, Chadosaurus, let's do it. I sent a whole legal document I wrote up explaining that I need my records removed fully and properly, and I refused to answer any questions, and they sent me a resignation letter. However, I believe they still hold on to my records, and I think that shit needs mass legal care for all. They should not be allowed to do that. That is actually possible. Oh, a person answered yesterday, I'm a notary and would help. There you go. We may be closer than we think. Let's do it on a Sunday. I'm down to help, says Bearded Realtor Utah. Cool. And then Scott Atkinson says Draper's where the rich live. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. One of many places where the rich live in Utah these days. In any event. I said 1 year ago that I would fail. And I'll start again. I did a lot of that, actually. More than I'm comfortable admitting. But I do want you guys to know that I failed. You, me, us, many times. And that I am so proud of myself for it. I learned how to fail. I learned that failure is a sacrament. I learned that failure is a rite, is a ritual to becoming a better person, or even just a more effective person. I learned that accepting that I will fail got to that cry part of the sermon. Sorry if that puts people off. I learned that giving myself permission to fail and even encouraging myself to fail, by encouraging myself to take risks, to be vulnerable, to dream a little bit too big, and then lean into it and see if I couldn't swing for the fences and actually make something happen. If I could just be courageous enough to take a risk and fail a little bit, as long as I was honest and vulnerable with the people who connect to the work of the Church of Korihors. Far from embarrassing you or hurting you, that you would be prouder of me for being willing to take a chance on us and on this. That I actually fulfilled the dream I had at the start of the Church of Korihors, that we would be the exact opposite of the Mormon Church and of every other high demand religion. And we're making it happen. People are starting to notice it. That's just that video on TikTok. I have another one on YouTube gathering up the same kind of feedback. And Utah is only the beginning. We will start these meetings in the Midwest. We will start these meetings in California. We will do these meetings all over the country. And I am in a position, through one of the most difficult developments in my life, which has been my divorce, I am now in a position where I am mobile enough that I can go around the country and personally help people through this dark time, through these difficult times in their faith transitions and in the end of their faith in God and the beginning of a spiritual rebirth. And again, while I won't lead in 2026, I'm not going to lead with the failure line, just because it takes too much effort to explain to people what I mean by I will fail. Because I have had more than one person comment to me that I was really interested in what you were doing until you started talking about failure so much. and that whether I understand what you mean by that or not, it turns me off, and now I don't want to have anything to do with it. I've had more than one person tell me that. And I said, well, okay, so maybe this is true, but it doesn't have to be part of the brochure. It doesn't have to be, on the front page of the brochure of what we do. But I am going to tell you now, I will fail again. This time, here's the difference. My goal had been in our first year to have as many as 4 heralds and at least a couple dozen luminaries. We have 1 herald. We briefly had 2. And we have 3 luminaries. And I love them. And I love this. I love what we're doing. There's some bugs on the website. We're figuring that out. The podcast is going to be revamped. I'm working that out. And it's going to be a journey. And I promise you this, as we go along in this journey, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be a little bit exposed in the way that, not like in any indecent way. I'm going to be a little bit exposed and vulnerable about how much struggle we're having. A lot of that's going to have to do with money. A lot of that's going to have to do with time. A lot of that's going to have to do with me and my shortcomings, my depression. And if you will be patient with me and patient with this and patient with what we're doing, we will grow slowly, but we will grow with a real community. We will meet together and we will meet some amazing people. There will be people who will get involved with what we're doing here who are assholes. We'll kick them out right away if we can, as soon as we find it. And eventually, if it turns out that I'm one of those assholes and you have to kick me out, then we'll do that. But in the meantime, we are going to start having these in-person meetings in 2026. And I am putting no pressure on myself to grow the ordained clergy at a fast pace. And I am one of the innovations that I've been implementing is that we're creating a volunteer system where people will be able to volunteer to help do the work without having to join the church. And also people will be able to donate, and we will ask people for donations to the work without having to join the church, because there are people who are interested in what we're doing, support what we're doing, but don't want to be affiliated officially with the church in terms of a fellowship, in terms of the fellowship, in which case we will incorporate them. More and more what we are going to do is very much opposite to what Christian churches like the Mormon Church do. And I do believe that the Mormon Church is a Christian church because they're hypocrites. And that's a hallmark of Christians. Anyways, now I said it. No, I done said it. Sorry if that hurt your feelings, but I mean, it is true. Anyway, but the one way in which we are very much different is that this is going to become a place for people to have spiritual community where they don't have to join the church to be a part of it. And that's going to be good for a lot of people who have left Mormonism, people who have left other high demand religions, because a lot of them don't want to be a part of another church. And for the first time, with the innovation that I think is really going to make this exciting and make these in-person events really happen, make in-person sermons, in-person sacraments really happen for the Church of Korihors and help us to do this work on a much bigger scale, is going to be that from now on, if you want to leave the church that you are in or pick up your spiritual development, having never been a member of any religion, or having left formally or informally left your religion, and you want to go through the spiritual process of releasing religious trauma and ecclesiastical abuse from your life, you can do it now. You'll be able to do it starting 2026 without having to join our church, join our fellowship officially. we will ask you to give a donation because we're very poor. And we are out here serving the unsheltered right now. In the future, it is my ambition that we will serve the employment insecure and the food insecure. I may throw that phone away. Just kidding. We are going to start serving people who are victims of abuse, like especially women who are victims of domestic violence, and children who are victims of domestic violence. Now that the government is turning their back on them, that's not a political statement; it's a moral statement. I finally get why the Mormon Church says that there are things that seem political to other people, but it's really just a moral statement. I've come around on that. Right now, our government is abusing people in America. I'm sure it's true about other governments too. I'm just not paying as close attention to those because, frankly, we are in crisis in America right now. Crisis. I was going to read and decided against it. There's a statement put out by the White House in October. I think I addressed this briefly in my last Godless sermon. In October, there was an executive order issued that states that the government can treat as DTs any organization that is seen to be anti-American, anti-capitalist, or anti-Christian, and particularly that people can be arrested and effectively disappeared if their rhetoric or beliefs reflect radical gender ideology or traditions to traditional American values around religion, family, and I think business or something like that, or capitalism. Wow. People took it seriously. We don't know how many people we don't know that anything has happened. This was back in October. 2 weeks ago, there was a leak out of the DOJ about the same time as this e-file thing is falling down, that the government's going to start paying bounties to people to turn somebody in, to narc on somebody for being of the wrong ideology. This is the danger we are living in. We are living in a day when Christofascism dominates. In that same document, I'm not going to read it because I've already got enough red flags in this post, but I will say it because there has to be courage displayed from somebody in this space who's willing to say it. There are other people who are saying it, but I'm the first one that I know of where I can tell you, if you think I'm not worried, if you think I'm not scared, it's not true. Okay, I am. I have kids. I have partners. I have a spiritual community of people I care very much for. And some of them are trans. And I love them. You got your card, Jules. Thanks. I love them. And I will not sit down and I will not be made to shut up. They need community like anybody else. And it may be a lot for me to think that I am a target. It may be me thinking too much of myself. Maybe it is. I hope it is. But by the language that we're reading in these documents put out by our government, what am I to think? Am I anti-American because I believe in secularism? I just, that blows me away. People support this? My fellow Americans support this? I have not called for violence against anyone, and I will not. I have condemned political violence on all sides. And all I want is room for people in my spiritual community and people that I love to be free. Why can't that be a thing? And I want them to be healthy. I had posted on TikTok a stitch on TikTok from a woman who had posted this week about how United Health had denied her had denied to cover her heart surgery that she needs to live. And she said, and she says, I can't afford to pay for it. And I've been paying my premium so that they won't cover a woman's heart surgery. And in the same document that I'm telling you about that was released in October, it specifically cites as radical ideology people who celebrated the ending of Charlie Kirk, and then it says, and of the CEO of this United Health company subsidiary. And I point out, I'm like, look, I've said before, I'll say again, this person should be alive today. Nothing justifies violence against these people. That nobody should have done these things to these men. They don't deserve that. They don't deserve to die for that. But at the same time, we don't deserve to die for being sick in this country. We don't deserve to die for having invested our lives and our educations into career fields that have been declared obsolete for some reason that turns out not to even be real in some cases, in many of these cases, because AI has made our careers obsolete, except, oops, wait a minute, fired us, replace us with an AI bot, and lo and behold, they discover the hard way that actually it turns out it's not quite as good as they thought it was. Maybe it will get better in the future, but who's taking care of making sure that there's opportunities for the American dream to still happen? Or are we just living in a future where we see the fulfillment of the prophecy of the great atheist prophet, George Carlin, who said that you call it the American dream because you have to be fucking asleep to believe it? Okay, it'd be safer for me to sit down and shut up. And many times, for the sake of the Church of Korihors, I decide that I will. I will at least be quiet enough that nobody misinterprets what I do or what I say as a call to violence, because I do not call to violence. I will not support violence, political violence of any kind. And I want that to be remembered in case I'm not thinking too much of myself and I find myself on the wrong side of the law, according to some people who happen to have power. May it never happen. I want you guys to know that I have never in my life felt more imbued with a sense of purpose and a reason to be alive than I have with the Church of Korihors. And for that alone, I am grateful to you. I've now spoken for 3 hours and I'm going to get off of here. But I recently did a somewhat snarky episode about Chief Mitiga, one of several I've done. Laughing, being jovial and lighthearted about how this man that many Mormons believed was going to become their new prophet, turns out has now abandoned them. That's all right, David Taylor. Let me rephrase, okay, before you react. Anybody who wants to can clip this. I feel for Chief Mitiga because he tried to start a spiritual movement or reinvigorate a spiritual movement that makes sense to me as an ex-Mormon. I see why people think Mormonism has appeal. I see why they want the Book of Mormon to be real, and they want more Book of Mormon to come out. And it's not going to happen because the Book of Mormon was false. Joseph Smith was a fraud. But I get even Joseph Smith because I do believe that Joseph Smith, fraud though he was, wanted people in his spiritual community to have something to get excited about. The difference between me and Mitiga, the difference between me and Joseph Smith, the difference between me and this Rob Warcup guy, who's, as far as I can tell, is pretty much starting his own Mormon thing. He hasn't stated as much, and may he never, taste any bitter cup of, punishment from the Mormon Church. I've been watching these guys for a while as they tried to kick up a new movement. Shane, what's Shane's last name? I always forget it. Anyway, Zion Media, same thing. I've been watching them. I watch as these Mormons are starting up more offshoot Mormon groups inside the Mormon Church, apparently being bold enough to realize that they may likely end up like me, excommunicated from the Mormon Church. But the difference is going to be, I was excommunicated because I would no longer lie or perpetuate their lies, because I wanted to tell the truth. And the Church of Korihors now and in the future, if we succeed, if we fail, if we grow a community where people feel welcomed and loved and cared for and spiritually nourished and treated well, it will be because we told the truth. And if we fail and collapse and never speak of it again, it will be because we told the truth. And to people who want truth. At the end of the day, there is no church of atheism. There's no atheist religion. Even the Church of Korihors is not atheist religion. There are people who value truth and honesty. And then there are people who prefer lies and mythology. And may they find whatever they are searching for. But I throw my stake in with this. I throw my lot in with this. I will find people all across these United States of America who have no desire to lie on the part of gods or organizations or corporations, certainly on behalf of billionaires like Peter fucking Thiel. They don't have any. Do you guys need me to rant about why Peter Thiel is such a fucking asshole? Or Elon Musk. In the day and age when Elon Musk is out here telling the world that he has recanted on atheism, sure, guy, whatever. I have to say, keep on trucking, buddy. On behalf of myself and every other atheist I know, every other atheist who I respect, every agnostic that I respect, on behalf of myself and many others, I won't mention by name, you go right up, you go off, buddy. Elon, you go right off. May you enjoy long health, a long life with good health of being a fucking asshole. And I am ecstatic about your not claiming to be an atheist. If I am going to be an atheist, which I assure you, I can change anytime I want. I can assure you, I could declare tomorrow that I believe that Joseph Smith was actually always a true prophet, and that Christ is king. And I can find myself back on the rolls of the Mormon Church tomorrow. I assure you I could do it, and they'd take me back desperately. I don't. I don't, because I don't miss it. I don't miss it. I love the Church of Korihors, not just because I started it, but because nothing else has given me this kind of purpose. And I'm going to get other people out there who have a desire to serve with us, whether you want to join our church or not. If you want to help us, we'll take it, man. We'll take it. We'll change people's lives. We make people's lives worth living. You show me a church that does that. Maybe they're out there. Maybe they're out there. But this one is ours. Amen. Let's have a little fun. This got heavy. No. Are we going to do more money than God? You guys know me. That's my wicked pleasure. I love more money than God. This is one we haven't done in a while. Do I have a full one available? Oh, I don't think I do have a full one available. Okay, let's do. Yeah, here we go. We'll have more podcast episodes. I'm planning to go live on Friday to do another fundraiser for the mission for the unsheltered. You guys will want to tune in for that. My plan is to go live at 10:30, but that's depending on when Mormon Discussions is finished with Mormonism Live, if they even do it. At some point, we're going to have enough people from the ex-Mormon community here with us who have no interest in Mormonism Live. Now we'll go live earlier. But frankly, I love staying up late at night with you guys on Friday nights. It's fun. So we're going to have midnight mass every Friday where we are going to have fun. We're going to play games. I still haven't figured out what we're going to do this Friday, but we're going to try a couple of things. It's going to be fun. So in any event, remember that we live in the age of reason. And flash bright, my friends.
After the night of faith dawns our revolution. Rebels in an age of doubt took hold of our evolution. Harness the elements, tame the gods of thunder, cast off the slave's chains, look up with wonder. Born into the age of reason, with hearts that grow and heal, we can build our tomorrow with minds that know and feel. Rise against tyrants, rise from bended knee. Dawn the age of reason, we choose to be free. to be free.